Hey guys, welcome back to my sewing room. I'm Kelly and you found me here on Pick and Stitches, and today we're going to do month 8 or block 8 of the Pieceful Basket Quilt Along. This is a pattern that comes out each month in the Sew Sampler from Fat Quarter Shop. You can purchase it separately, so I'll put a link in the description for that. And I just want to show you all my tips and tricks. So let's jump right on in. Okay, guys, so for this one, it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of the same thing that I've been doing kind of all along. I do have some extra pieces. In fact, I thought I would show it to you. Maybe I need to give you a better close-up later on. These are all of the extra pieces I've kind of made along the way. Now, I am also sewing out the Piece and Quilt sampler in this same line by Camille Ross Kelly of Shoreline. So I do have some extras from that as well. And I figure at the end of the day, I'm just going to have some kind of random blocks and maybe we can come up with something creative to do with them at the end. So the big thing that I did different on this month's block versus some of the previous months is there's a lot of flying geese in this one, and I did use the 4 at a time method. So please feel free to follow along with the 4 at a time method if you choose, but if not, you can always sew them out exactly as they are in the directions. It's really easy just to do the corners, but you do have to be a little bit more precise as you go, careful as you go to make sure everything is exactly what you want. So let's jump right on in. I also took a couple minutes before I filmed this video today to take a design board. I had a couple poster boards left over. I just wrapped it in this fabric that I had left over. I'm trying to think what. This was a backing fabric. I think this was my 4-patch picnic, 4-patch fun, 4-patch something. It's the pattern available on my channel, on my website for free if you're interested in that. Anyways, I took this fabric, I wrapped a design board. I used this in the video because I know a lot of times this kind of white fabric on my white batting doesn't show up so well. So hopefully that's a little bit better for you guys. If you'll comment below and let me know how it goes. Okay, so I've got all of my pieces cut out and on my design board and ready to go. And if you're wondering, I kind of keep like one design board dedicated to all my offcuts. I've been using the Shoreline collection for this quilt as well as the Pieceful Quilt Sampler. So I do have a couple extra blocks that I've kind of made along the way, and I'll probably come up with something fun and different to do with some of these kind of orphan blocks that I made extra as I went along. So to start, again, I've got everything cut out. We're going to head over to the machine, and the first things I'm going to do are everything that's kind of on a diagonal so that I can just change that presser foot once today. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take our piece N and our piece R's, and I'm going to grab a friction erasable pen. And we're just going to line these up right sides together. Now you can draw a line right down the middle, or if you have one of these quilter rulers, they make it nice and easy. I'm just lining up this center gap with the corners, and I'm going to mark 2 lines that are 1/2 inch apart, 1/4 inch from the center of the block. Okay, so we'll take this over to the machine and we'll stitch down both sides. So that's going to be kind of our first piece that we'll do. We're also going to take piece O and piece T, and we're going to do the same thing. Then we're also going to grab our pieces S and M, and we're going to do the same thing for it. So we get a lot of this same step kind of out of the way with all of our different dots. And I always forget this one at the end for some reason. Don't know why. Piece B and piece I. Right sides together. Now the last thing I'm going to need to do with the straight foot on there is take one piece of A and our big square, which is F. And we're going to place this. That's not square. What size is that supposed to be? I think I cut it wrong. That'll do it. Okay guys, so this one's going to be slightly different. We're actually going to go from one corner to the other on this one. So we're not centering that corner in our seam like we did on those other blocks. We're going to go from one corner to the other. And then if you want to, because this is going to be our discard, we can do a line that's right on the line, and then you're going to go a 1/2 inch away. So that way after we sew those, we can cut it on this dotted line and have a 1/4 inch seam on either side. So then we're going to just place it in the corner and we'll stitch this one on exactly like this. Okay. And today I'm just sewing with the 60 weight glide polyester that I like so much. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in that. I sewed with Aurifil for years and years and I love it, but it's just a lot less lint goes into my machine with this polyester thread and the bobbins last forever. So I just decided to kind of give it a spin and I've really been loving it, and I don't often switch back to my Aurifil unless I'm paper piecing. Oops, I was free motion quilting the other day. Forgot to bring my feed dogs back up. So my stitch is at a 2. Feed dogs are up now. Here we go. Okay, so we'll just send these back through on the other line. Now we'll just take our ruler. These lines are already sewn, so they don't have to be super precise. You could even cut these with scissors. So remember, this is our discard, so I'm going to set that aside. I'm not even going to get it confused for the pressing. You're struggling. So first I'm going to press towards the dart and see what we end up with. Let's roll through and snip off all the dog ears. And then if you want to press open, this would be the time to do that. Okay, so I know from previous blocks that I'm going to cut this one in half. Grab a big ruler for that. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and take A and give A diagonal haircut as well. And these will be the outside points that get our block to stand on point. Okay, so we are going to have some extra pieces here. This made 2, and we're not going to need that. And when we cut these together, in the directions it had you cut these into quarters first, so you would have had 2 quarters left. And that is just the extra piece that we're going to have from this method. So it's going to instead be this half square triangle. Now we're going to take our piece M. It will be the same size as this last piece that we put together. We're going to make sure that we're going perpendicular to this line. We don't want to sew the same line again, so we're going to go opposite corners. we'll go sew this one on the machine as well. Okay, now we'll cut these apart, corner to corner. We're in the seam again. So even though I kind of veered off my ruler a little bit, that's no big deal. All right, so this piece I am going to use. So I'm going to go ahead and put it, made a darker design board. Hopefully that'll show up better today. Our seams, and then I'm going to press these towards the grain just because there's fewer seams there. Towards the grain. And I'll set those under the clapper for just a second. Okay, so now we'll snip these dog ears, and you look back at your pattern, and now we've got those opposite corners and a couple extra blocks for our design board. So when we place these in our basket, they're going to go with the dark towards the middle. So they're not exactly the same. They're going to be different, and that's what you want. So as we put these on our design board to start building this out, it's upside down. It's going to make this center of the navy together. Okay. So going to take these two extra pieces. So that was my surplus. I'm going to put it on my design board that I just keep all my extra Camille Ross Kelly on these days. Okay, so in our directions, it has us making the flying geese. And this was one of the things that I altered. So what I'm going to do instead is for pieces U right here. So I have 2 pieces of U and 2 pieces of Q. Q and U, isn't that funny? Okay, so we'll take these 2 to start. And I'm going to make the 4 at a time flying geese method. So I will put a link to this in the description. There's an easy cheat sheet on the Fat Quarter Shop website. And I just put my post-it note under the size that I want to cut. So I know I want my unfinished size to be 2 by 3.5. So that means I'm going to cut 5-inch squares and 6.5-inch squares. And I just look at the drawing here to see that I want here, the larger square is shown as the white or the background fabric, and that makes the background be the outside of my points. And then I looked back at my pattern to make sure that that was how our flying geese are going to end up, and it is. So I'm going to do this flying geese method from here. And you can follow the directions directly on the cheat sheet. I like to kind of shorten it up just a tad. I'm going to take these 2, and this actually is going to make some extras. So if you're kind of running short on fabric or you bought the kit that the Fat Quarter Shop sold, then you may not have enough for all of this extra. I bought a half-yard bundle, and again, I'm using it on a couple of quilts, and I don't mind subbing in some of my existing patterns. So the first thing that you're going to do for the flying goose method is we're going to cut these in half on the diagonal. And then I'm going to pin them because I don't want them to move. And we're going to put a 1/4-inch seam on both sides of this. And we're going to do that for both sets. And again, this is going to make you 8 flying geese. We won't need that many, but I have a few spare parts. And I'm going to go ahead and switch my presser foot back to this guided foot. You certainly don't have to. I didn't for ages and ages, but I've just found that I actually really like it now. Okay, so we'll drop our presser foot, and we're just going to sew 1/4 of an inch on all these blocks. Okay, so now we'll head back over to the pressing station and we'll get all of these pressed. When you're pressing this flying goose method, it is going to be important which direction you press. So on these, although it seems totally counterintuitive, we're going to press towards the white. Okay, so I've gone ahead and pressed these towards the white, which seems kind of counterintuitive after I cut them apart. Now we're going to get them lined up, and your brain is going to want to try to nest these seams because they are nestable, but that is not actually what we want to do. So we want to line them up with the white on one side and the white on the other side, right sides touching, and then I'm going to just pin these in this overlap section, and it looks funny, but it'll all work out in the end, I promise. Then we're going to take this same add a quarter, whatever, quilter's rule, and we're going to mark our 2 lines again. So we will have to switch our foot back out one time. All right, once you've marked that, we'll head over to the machine and sew these 2 sides. Okay, so we'll just stitch these 2 sides down. Okay, so now we're just going to cut between our 2 lines again. By now you guys know this routine. So now we've got our 2 parts. Okay, so now here's the only thing that's a little bit funky. As we get ready to press these, and you can still see my seam line there because it's green, I'm going to snip right here in the middle, almost to my thread line. So I'm not going to snip all the way past it. I'm just going to snip to that thread line on all 4 of these because we're going to press each side a different direction. So we're going to be pressing towards the white on all 4 of these. So it's a little bit tricky to do from the front. So I like to just kind of use my iron to hold it, and I can give it a little bit of tension. And then we're going to come each direction here so that it's nice and flat. And I am going to let these sit under the clapper for a minute before I cut them so that they can really get flat. So again, I'm just using the iron, kind of putting it under the littlest amount of tension. I don't want to distort the block, but I'm using that to give me something to press against. So we'll do that for all 8 of these. I said all 8 of these. They will be 8 when we cut them apart. They are only 4 pieces right now. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, and here is where, if you have a rotating mat, you might like to use it, but you certainly don't need it. I actually have these rulers in 2 different sizes. So you're going to look, these are talking about the finished sizes, and the number I said earlier was the unfinished. So we're looking for the 1.5 by 3. You can also do this on the Creative Grids ruler. Okay, so this works out a little bit better because it fits on the ruler. So I'm going to actually use this ruler to start. I've got this flying goose pattern that I can use as my guide. It's going to give me exactly a 1/4 of an inch cut on this side. So I'm going to do that for both of these first. That way I'm not cutting something longer than that ruler. You know, safety first, right? Okay, so now we can take that flying goose ruler, and I know exactly where I want to line up. And I'm going to cut this side and this side. And then the last thing I'm going to do is flip it around. I'm going to line this up with the bottom. And now I'm lined up with this line. I'm going to cut this other edge. And that's going to give me the perfect flying goose. Okay, so again, you can use this ruler to do these longer cuts, and I've done that in the past. Just trying to be a little bit more careful and proper, at least on my channel when you guys are all watching, you know. Okay, so the back line with this white edge now, so that I can trim the other side to length. Oops. There we have it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all 4 of these on the long side first. Okay, guys, so there you have it. That is our 4 at a time flying geese method. I'm going to go ahead and press these and leave them under a clapper for a bit. And I just find that this is like the fastest way that I can sew them. Everything over at the machine is really easy and straightforward. Nothing's fiddly. I don't have to glue anything. And I don't have to be super precise when I'm cutting big strips. I'm precise when I'm using this ruler, but that's really the only time that it's a huge deal. Now there is a little bit of waste with this, and I know some people cannot handle any scraps at all, but for me, this method is just what I like to use. So please feel free to follow the pattern if that's more in your wheelhouse, but I thought I would show you how I like to do it. Okay, so now we're going to take one of our flying geese. I'm actually going to turn it around so that it's the right way. One of our half square triangles and piece P. So the first thing we're going to do is have it with the blue side down. So it's going to be like it's touching. We're going to attach P together here and we'll press that. So let's head over to the machine. Okay, so we'll switch back over to that guided foot. I think everything from here on out will be easy peasy. All right, so we'll line this guy up and stitch it down. You know, I'm looking at this block and I don't think I actually trimmed this down to size. After we sewed, this one should be 2 inches. So as I'm holding it here, it actually needs just the slightest haircut. So I'm going to head over to the cutting station. I'm just going to give that a quick little trim. So this is another reason why I really like the triangles on a roll, because I don't have to come back and trim things again. But these both are going to need the slightest of haircuts. If you sew to one side of the line or the other, it just always is going to need a little love. And I'm actually going to trim this one on all 4 sides because it doesn't look as square as I want it to. So now we'll try this again. Okay, blue triangle down, polka dots together. Oh, look at it. That's so much nicer. So whenever you feel 2 blocks coming together and they don't feel quite right, sometimes it's really worth it to stop and measure and just make sure before you get any further into your project. Okay, so I'm I'm going to press towards my white here. And then we can press this open so it doesn't show through. Okay, so now we've got it with the blue down. We're going to take this back over to the machine and sew these two together. So I'm just going to flip that up and we'll head over. Okay, so I've got those lined up where I would like them. I'm actually going to come from this side so I can make sure that seam stays open. Okay, so we'll go press this one open. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit under the clapper for a minute, and we're going to start to piece together the rest of our block. So we've got our half and half in the middle, and then our blues are going to be kind of touching, if you will, and kind of touching. We're going to have, this kind of makes that first goose. Oops. So then we're going to have 1, 2, and then our third piece is going to be the one that's under the clapper that we just created here, that are going to point down. Oops, up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay. So what I'm going to do to just keep things simple, first I'm going to connect these two flying geese. So I'm just going to connect those and then we'll press them open. Okay, so I've got them going the same direction, which is all you really need to worry about. And then I'm going to sew with my point side up. I'm going to keep my eye right here on where those two seams come together, because I do not want to cut that off. Okay, same thing, going the same direction, and I'm going to flip it over so I can see. And if you can't see because your stitches thread color is hard to see, you can even put like a dot on there with one of your friction erasable pens so that it's easier to see. So that may help you guys out on camera too. So that's where I want to make sure and kind of leave the dot on that side of my stitching. Okay, so I'll open these up, double check and make sure that I like where my seam ended up, and then we will go press these. So I'm going to go ahead and press both of my new pieces. So I've got a little bit of Mary Ellen's Best Press. I did starch these, but I starched these back when I started this project in March, and I feel like there's not enough starch on them any longer. So I do soak all of mine to starch in the beginning, and so I feel like I've already done all of the shrinking that's going to happen, so I don't worry about that too much. But if you have not pre-washed or starched your fabrics, you might have to be a little bit more worried about that. Time for the fun part. This is where we get to build out our stuff. So we've got this weird block that's going to go opposite here, and so I'm just going to build this, oops, this way, into 2 rows to start. So this one we're not even going to need yet. We'll get our first set of flying geese there. So we're going to connect. And this one should be ready. And these guys are going to go down. So I hope this navy backdrop shows up a little bit better for you guys. I know the white fabric that I always pick plus the white batting that's on most of my design boards can be a little hard to see. So I'm going to go ahead and grab piece H and piece G. and we're going to just go over to the machine. I like to sew these three together, and then these two. So what I'll do is I'll just take these and flip them over and sew this, and then flip it back open and sew this. So it'll kind of be chain pieced together. So again, I'm just going to take this first row and flip it over as I pull it over to my machine. So I'm going to get that lined up. And usually I would flip that over so I could make sure and hold it open, but I want to keep these kind of in order. And if you like to pin, please pin. Okay, so then I've got my middle and my left blocks. And then we've got this whole bottom row. I'll just pull that all back through, and then I'm going to pull them open, double check my points. That one's actually a little bit tight. It's probably okay, guys, but I'm going to go ahead and rip that because I want to have all of my points showing. So the other kind of added benefit to this glide thread is that it's actually really easy to rip. And I don't remember what I sewed recently that I put the Aurifil in. And I love Aurifil, don't get me wrong, but I had to rip a seam and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot how bad this is. No fun. Okay, so let's try that again. I am going to go ahead and flip this one over just so I can make sure, so I can see it here on the back side. Okay, that looks better. So I'll be able to press that. So now we're going to take the top left-hand piece, make sure my geese are all still flying in a row. And then we've already got this disconnected from the rest of it. We'll just flip it over so we can see that point. So again, if you need to help yourself see it, just grab a friction erasable marker or pen, and I'm going to put that dot right there. So I want to leave the dot inside of my quilt. And let's just look at it while we're doing all this. Okay. So by leaving that dot, I got that point exactly where I want it. And that's what I want to see. Okay, so that's our top row. Then we've got our second row. That corner looks great. This one will look good when it's in a seam. And so we're going to attach this last piece. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over because it just has that one big rose. It's not really a directional print, but I'd like to see it the other way. Okay, let's head back over to the pressing station. Okay, so now we've got these three pieces and we're just going to start pressing. So for these, I'm going to go ahead and press the middle row towards the middle and the outer rows to the outside. Okay, so now get everybody back out. Make sure all of our geese are flying the right way. And then we're going to stitch these three rows together. So they should all nest. But this is really easy to throw a couple quick pins in. If I'm going to pin a nesting seam, I do like to pin on both sides of the seam, especially because there's so many layers here. You're just kind of wiggling your finger back and forth to really press and make sure that those two seams are two peas in a pod. Reminds me of being a kid, like at summer camp in those really tiny, tiny beds. And you're in your sleeping bag and you can't even roll over. That's how we want these to be. So we'll go stitch these together. Then I'll open it up and attach this one, and then we'll press them both at the same time. So as we're sewing, we're going to have a point here. And that's the only major point that I'm going to be concerned about. So I'm going to look at that stitching lines, and if you need to, put that mark on there so you know what you're aiming for. So we'll take a peek, make sure we didn't cut off that point, and we didn't. There's a lot of white in that fabric right there coming together, but it looks fine. So now we're going to swing it around and get our other side. And threaded my needle. I've been forgetting to do the needle trick this time, actually. It's been a couple days since I've been able to sew, and it's not on autopilot for me yet, but that did seem to help when if you have a needle that wants to unthread on you. It's usually if I'm just moving way too fast. But this glide thread is also easier to thread the needle if you don't choose to use your automatic threader. Great. All right, so we'll go press these. So I'm going to set that seam, and then I'm actually going to press that one this way, so I'll do that last. Set this seam. Everything's so grounded. All right. So again, if you would prefer to press your seams open, please do. It certainly makes for a less bulky quilt. Your long armor will probably like you more. Since I am my own worst enemy, I am my own long armor too. So there we go. Okay, so that's the bulk of our block here. We're going to just continue to kind of work our way around. First, we're going to take our piece K and attach it to the bottom because we've kind of already done all the heavy lifting on the rest of the block. So we'll go stitch this one on and then press it open. Okay, so K's on and pressed open, and now we're going to attach J to this side. K and J are very similar in size, so do make sure you're getting the right piece because K is going to be a little bit shorter than your J piece. So we'll go ahead and stitch this on. Okay, so we'll press that open, and we're just going to kind of keep working our way around this block. So the next piece that we're going to put together is kind of the white border. So we're going to need piece D, piece L, and our little half square triangles. Set that aside. So we'll need piece D, piece L, and that's not it, our half square triangle. So we're going to have the blue go away, blue in the middle, and then our white piece on the edge. So we'll go ahead and sew all three pieces together and then press them at the same time. So I just moved them over here in the same order. So I'm going to attach them one right after the other. Just kind of finger press that towards the blue. Again, I want my blue to the outside, so just make sure you keep it oriented the right way. I did not trim this one either, you guys. I'm getting ahead of myself today. So this is supposed to be 1.5 by 1.5, and it is like 1 3/4. So let's go trim it down. Yep, slightest of haircuts here. We're just going to take off this little tiny bit on the edges. I'm going to go ahead and trim my other block while I'm thinking about it. And that one needs a super slight haircut too. All right, there we go. Blue towards the outside bottom again. And I will go ahead and stitch it on. Okay, so we'll go ahead and press those all at the same time. I'm going to do the same thing for this other right-hand side of my block. I'm just going to use C. So it's again my long white strip, my L piece, and then my L basket. And our two different pieces. So again, one's going to be a little bit longer than the other one. And we're going to attach our top one first. So it is going to get attached here. We'll press it, and then we'll come back and attach this one. So from the other side so that I can see all my points, because I want to make sure that I keep them intact. So I'll just switch these pins. And then for a little help on the camera, I'm going to mark where I want that to end. So the other thing you could do, because these are pressed up, so they're a little bit harder to see. And we've got them all marked. And you certainly don't have to do that step, just if you need a little additional help, making sure to leave all those points. Even just the dot as a reminder to pay attention is sometimes just enough. Okay, let's check our points. How'd we do? Okay, that looks good. Good. Oh, I think it looks great, you guys. Yay! Okay, so let's go press this and then we'll attach that other side. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do is take piece J and K and we're going to attach one piece of E to each. So we've got our shorter blue with our white, and they're going to be attached like this. So we're going to get this nested seam, and then everything else should fall right in line. Okay, so we'll take our block and it will attach here, and then we'll have both sides done. Okay, so that top seam is going to nest. Everything else is just pieced in a way that won't matter so much. Get a couple pins in it. Now this is attaching to my geese underneath, so I can see it through the fabric. You may not be able to see it on camera. If you couldn't, you could even mark it on your fabric. In fact, I can do that so you guys can see it. So I know that that's my point and that's my point. And I don't want to cut those off. So we pull that back through, take a look. Those points look great. I probably could have gone a little closer to that one, but that's okay. I would rather leave a little too much than not enough. So yeah, all of my quilts at this house seem to need washing a fair amount. Maybe it's the 4 kids, maybe it's me, I don't know. But we have a lot of quilts that go through the washing machine, a ton. And so when they get crinkly, I like for those points to still show up. Okay, so now it's looking like a basket, you guys. Blues are on the bottom, all that's good. Green's on the bottom. Okay, so now we'll attach this one. There's our last seam on the main body of our block. All we have left now is to put it on point. So I'm going to press to my blue. I'm going to set it under the clapper for just a minute while we talk about what we do with our last 4 pieces. So we have those pieces of A and the pieces of A with F that we haven't done anything with yet. So you're going to take 2 of your white pieces, white only pieces, and those are going to make the outside corners at the top. And then we're going to have our kind of pedestal. So these are making, I guess I kind of call them like the foot of the basket. So what you're going to want is for them to touch the bottom of your basket. So we're basically going to go like this. Now the easiest way to sew this on is to come opposite. So we're going to center our triangles. These little dog ears are going to hang off a little bit. That's okay. We're just going to center it. We're going to do these 2 sides and then press it open and trim it. And then we'll come back and do these last 2 sides. So we'll do our whites on first. And we'll do the opposite corner, bottom of our basket. So this side down here. And again, I'm going to do that same thing. I'm just going to kind of center it. You could use a pair of scissors. It really is just kind of the dog ears, but I'm already over here, so this is what I'm going to do. Okay, so this one won't have quite as much movement right to left. You just want to make sure that you're still centered and that you're keeping everything nice and square. You can kind of use the line of your, I call this like the napkin part, right? I think about it being the lining on a bread basket. Oops, this way. And then we'll line all that up. And this is our last seam, you guys. All right, I will press it and get it up on the board for us. Okay, guys, that is a wrap on the 8th block of this Pieceful Baskets Quilt Along. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope the tips and tricks helped. I did grab my other, oh, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. Pieceful Baskets. You remember how I was talking about, was that really how the other ones came together? I thought I could just look really quick, but I have to pull them out to see. So the other blocks, they attached them one at a time, kind of as you worked your way around. So this may not have been the first one that they showed us that way. Now I have to look at month 7. That was month 3. So they could have changed it since it's been a couple months. I'm just wondering how many months I was off course. No, so the other ones show putting on one and then the other, and then coming right behind it and putting that second one on. So I guess someone must have noticed over at Fat Quarter Shop that a shortcut, you could just seam those two together really quick, but it wasn't me misreading the instructions all along. It was me not noticing that you could do that though. So spoiler alert, I don't catch everything either. All right, that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed this video or you like watching any of my other tutorials or unboxing, it would help me out a ton if you would hit that like and subscribe button. I'd love to see what you're working on over on our private Facebook group, so please join us over there. And until then, I will see you guys next time.